Hello, welcome to this month's painting tutorial. This month we're going to take a look at something unique. It has three difficult elements all combined. It's a really low value painting, which can be difficult in watercolor because it's easy for everything to become muddy and washed out, and this painting really has some bright whites that pop. It's a snow scene, it's a sunset scene, and it's also a water scene. So we have some really difficult chores ahead of us. To offset the difficulty of that somewhat, I've chosen a reference material that has a really beautiful simplicity to it. So instead of painting an entire forest of snowy trees in a sunset reflected in the water, we're going to choose one, and we're going to take our time and try to do it as beautifully as possible. The first thing that you're going to do is to draw the scene on your watercolor paper. I've done that. It's really not much more than the sun and the tree, but there are a few things that we want to take note of before we get started. Number one, this horizon line that I drew, I wanted it to be exactly straight, so I drew it with a ruler, but now it's much too dark, and I don't want the pencil line to distract because the paint is going to be light enough that we're still going to be able to see that pencil line unless I erase it. So I'm going to lighten that up significantly with my kneaded eraser. The tree I'm not as worried about because it's darker. And then the second thing though is the bright highlights. The sun is the most primary one, the sun here, and then as it's reflected in the water. So in the reference material, it's not exactly round the way that I printed it out, but it is in reality. The sun is perfectly round. So I'm going to choose a round, you can either use a compass or you can just use something perfectly round, and then trace the circle on your masking or a Frisket film. So this is some Frisket film. Make sure you trace on the right side. Actually, in this case, it doesn't really matter because you're making a perfect circle. So I trace that right on the sticker side. I cut it out carefully. And then I'm going to peel off the sticker backing. I want it to go in the same spot that I see it on the painting, just because I like the layout of the painting and because I don't want to mess with the composition and the reflection in the water. About there. Tamp it down really well so that we don't get any paint slipping underneath. And then if you're cutting, left some pencil lines, go ahead and go over the top with a kneaded eraser, get rid of those. I'm going to do the same thing in this reflection down here. So I have to make sure that it's very, very precise, and I only want the white core protected, not everything. So I'm going to draw that more carefully. Erasing lines that I don't need as I go. And the really important thing here is symmetry. So that's why I like to skip from one side to the other. While the feeling of that curve is still in my fingers, from where I just drew it, I jump over to the other side and draw the same thing. Got this side a little bit longer. That's no good. And by pressing down quite hard, I can see my lines and trace them using that Frisket film again. So there are a couple brands of Frisket film. This is the Graphics. It's a little bit thicker. And then I also use Badger, which is thinner, but it is it's easy. It's harder to draw on, but it's easier to see through. So there's pluses and minuses with both brands. Let me get this cut out. I'll get this cut out, tamped down, and come back to you and we'll start painting. Okay, we're all set and we're going to start in the sky. But since this is a reflection scene, we're going to do the sky and the reflection simultaneously. So what you need to do is get a nice clean spot on your palette, something without any other paint gomming it up. And you need one puddle of Winsor yellow and one of Winsor red. If you don't have those exact colors, just make sure that you use a red and a yellow that won't stain the paper. So alizarin crimson is a staining red. Don't use that. But other reds and yellows will work. Beryllium yellow will work. Cadmium yellow, though, and cadmium red. The cadmiums tend to stain. So stay away from those for this technique. Because what you're going to want is a nice fluid intermingling color to make this a realistic sunset scene. So I'm going to get my Winsor yellow ready and activated. And my Winsor red. Then you can see on the picture that the yellow is what's closest to the white. So we're going to start by painting that yellow. And I want a nice wet surface so that my colors will mix together freely. So I'm just going to paint in the water and in the sky. Then I'm going to go in with a pretty bold coat. Oh, wow. 1 second. All right, I'm going to go in with a pretty bold coat of the Winsor yellow first. Paint a circle around my sun and paint a circle around the reflection. Then before that has a chance to dry, I'm going to mix in another circle of the Winsor red. I'll make that go up here too. And these two are going to mix together to create oranges. Then on the outside here, we're going to need some blue. So I'll just throw some blue in over the top, right over here. And right over here. Do I know exactly how it's going to work? No, I don't. But in general, when we spray, we haven't let the paper dry at all. Those colors are going to start to bleed into each other and mix our sunset for us. So we're just letting the watercolor paint itself. And then when we have mixed and gotten and turned it enough so that the bullseye effect is gone, you can see how it's happening down here. It's making a perfect sunset scene for us. And what if it doesn't look exactly like the reference material? Who cares? Doesn't have to. It's not a make a sunset painting that looks exactly like your reference material painting. Okay, this is your sunset. So there really isn't a right and a wrong here. Let that help you as you experiment with a new style. Okay, so let me go off camera real quick, finish this level up, and then I'll let it dry and we'll continue into the trees. Alright, the sky is nice and dry. I'm going to remove my Frisket film just by using a fingernail to get up the edge. Easy, easy. It's just like taking off a sticker. And then you can see that the lines, especially down here, are really kind of distractingly, they're distractingly straight. So I'm going to soften that with my little angled shader. Get it damp, get a clean cloth close by, and then just blot, blot, blot on the edges of these bright, bright highlights. So I rub and soften out. This is going to work best if your color is nice and fresh, so make sure that you remove your Frisket film as soon as possible so that you can have more success in this stage. Alright, so that's going to take a while. I'll do that off camera, but now let's go into the background and lay in this line of the gray trees. I want to match that color carefully, so I'm going to get a scrap of watercolor paper and I'm going to mix up until I find that exact right gray. Quite a bit of blue in it. It's a little bit more blue than that. That's good right there. And then it's a bit hard to see my line, so before I paint, I'm going to redraw that upper line with a nice straight T-square. Boop. Okay. Now I'm going to lay in that line of trees. So this is the lower line. I'm using my flat brush and I'm just staying nice and in control. And then I'm going to, before it has a chance to dry, I'm going to start to sort of develop some tree shapes by just bouncing the brush up and down. So here's some, I turn my flat brush so I'm painting with the edge now. And you can see how I can get some really easy trees that don't look too overworked. So that's what we're looking for. And then I will blot so that there's more of a variation in tone, a little bit more interest. And then I'm going to wash out a little bit of the water and use that same color to do what's going on the other side, because it's even lighter on this side. And then again, make some of those broken tree shapes. And then I see that same color down here in the reflection. So I'm just staying close to that line that I drew again. But in the reflection, there's also going to be some ripples. So instead of making those trees the same way, I'm going to make some lines like this, really skinny little lines. And those lines all together will look like the trees being reflected in the water. But right now they just look like broken up lines. Okay. I'm going to darken up the base of the trees on this level a little bit. And then soften them up by blending into the rest of the tree shape just by bouncing the brush a bit and blotting it with a paper towel. Alright, so I have to soften up these rings and let the background dry, and then we're going to come in and we're going to do the work in the tree, and it's going to be pretty much finished. This is a very, very simple, fast painting to put together, but the tree is going to be time consuming. So let's let this dry and then gear up for that. Alright, we are going to start on the tree now. So pull your reference material nice and close so that you can see what you're doing. And then get a round brush. I'm going with a number 6 round, but my painting is very small. Then I'm going to mix up a nice dark using some Payne's Gray, some Burnt Umber, and some reds, and a little bit of blue so that it has a kind of a purple depth to it. Okay. When that's done, I'm going to just start painting the tree using that round brush. Lots of juicy color that will just fill in for me. And make sure that you're watching the reference material so that you don't paint in the wrong place or paint over some of those snow patches. So see how I just start where the branch is fat and then I draw out skinnier by lifting up the brush with the natural brush stroke. It's a natural, really pleasing way to make those branches. So you're just going to do this for a while. If you haven't started, or if you don't have a nice clear drawing of the tree before you start, make sure that you redraw it. Otherwise you're going to find yourself lost in the painting, making too many branches and making those branches look artificial. It's really difficult to paint a tree, a natural looking tree, without any kind of reference or guide. So just take your time and do this. And make sure that you are only painting with the dark color in the places on the reference material that you see those. This is a snowy tree, so a lot of the branches are going to need to be in a really much lighter color. And then when I have that basic skeleton built in with my number 6 round with those darks, I'm going to pick up a rigger brush, which is a round brush with really long bristles so that you can make a very fine line. This is a rigger brush, and I'm going to mix up a much lighter gray. And the gray is going to look like the snow on those branches. So now I'm just going to fill in. Ooh, see how nice and light those little lines come out? That's why you save these for the skinnier branches. I'm going to go through though, and I'm going to paint the entire tree this way, using my number 6 round for the fat parts of the branches, and then the rigger brush for the thin gray parts. Just painting it branch by branch, and this is why this part of the painting is the most time consuming. This is a fiddly little tree, so take your time and do it right. If you get tired, then make sure to take a break, get up, walk around, come back to it so that your tree doesn't look like it was painted impatiently. I'm going to do that off camera and come back to you. Alright, the first tree is done, so now I'm going to paint the reflection in the water. And this is where it gets a little trickier because the reflection in the water isn't so realistic, but it needs to be realistic enough that it has still enough of the elements of the tree that it looks like a reflection. But then see, all these lines get really wavy and interesting. So the only trick to doing a reflection of a tree that looks like this is to take your time and to be consistent with the ripples. So I'm going to start with the same color mixed up for the trunk and make some of those little grass shapes and everything so that it's the same upside and down. And then it goes straight down to this first ripple. After which things start to get broken up a little bit. So you can go to a smaller brush and that will help you to make those small little lines. But I'm just following my pencil lines that I determined in the sketching phase. And I'm taking my time and just slowly filling in these little ripples. And you need to have a solid base on the inside, and then the ripples sort of go from either direction from there.
Hey, Mom, brush my teeth.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, sorry. It's okay. So you have a solid base, and then your ripples go out to the right and to the left, like a zigzag. Just pay really close attention to your reference material as you do this, and you won't go far wrong. Now in the branches, I'm going to trade off to a gray, and I have drawn my ripples and I've drawn my branches already, so now it's just a matter of being true to my drawing. Okay, so I have to take some time and really concentrate on filling these shapes in accurately. But it's really, there's no trick to it, it's just a matter of taking your time, like I've been saying, paying close attention to those reference materials and putting in all these little details. And make sure too that you don't go too dark. Some of the branches and the reflections are dark, but a lot of them are a lot lighter gray, both because the water will lighten things generally and because it's reflecting that light gray color. The mass of the tree is light, so you're not going to see as many of those dark branches in the reflection as you do in the tree itself. So let me take some time now and fill these in, just following the patterns from the water and from my drawing, and I'll come back to you in 10 minutes. After adding some additional detail to the tree and the reflection, this is where I've wound up. So the only thing left to do would be to add a little bit more detail in the snow if you want to do that, or you know, you can always do some more fiddling around with the tree. If I want to make a slight adjustment to the tree shape on the trunk here, got a little skinny looking, so I can go ahead and just widen it up using some more of that dark color. And yeah, it's easy. Just takes a matter of, it's just a matter of taking your time and filling in some of those small details. And that's all that painting really is. You start with the large shapes. When those are correct, then you can start putting the details on top. And then you just need to pace yourself
making sure you don't do too much so that you have time to come back to it with fresh eyes and make final adjustments. So if I was done, and since we've covered about everything that it takes for the skill set for this painting, we'll just say yes, we're done. Then you're going to take off your tape, reveal those nice clean borders, and then this is your finished painting. So here's what we started with. Here's what we ended with. You can see that there's more color in the painting than there is in the original photo, and I think that that's just fine. So this is a nice painting to try at home. It's going to give you some chances to develop reflections, sunset scenes, and the simple beauty of some snow scenes all together. And then you can use those techniques in other paintings. So this is a great building block painting. And it's one that you can do not only one time, but several times. And you're going to be pleased by how your sunset colors especially turn out each time. I guarantee it'll never be the same twice. And you're probably going to come up with some where you love one aspect of it, but not the tree. You love the tree on another, but not the sunset. So it's a tricky business getting everything that you love together in one painting. But that's where practice comes in. So that concludes this month's painting tutorial. I hope you've learned some things that you can take away with you to your own studio and to other paintings as well. And I thank you so much for watching.